Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this series of labs on delivering bulletproof HTML5 websites with AWS, we're going to be creating a static HTML5 website that will be delivered with high speed, low latency, and high reliability to the many CloudFront edge locations that are located across the globe. Now, this is different to hosting your website using WordPress, because WordPress is running on your server and you are paying for that compute capacity. A static website hosted through CloudFront is delivered to the client's browser, and it is the client's device. It could be a desktop computer or a mobile device, and that will be providing the compute capacity. You're not going to be paying for that. Even a mobile phone, it will still have a quad-core processor and gigabytes of memory, more than enough to deliver our website. It will also provide a better user experience because the client will be interacting with their own device instantaneously. Another big advantage is the ability to cope with massively varying demands in requests, and also protection against common attacks such as distributed denial of service or DDoS. Okay, step number one, we're going to be purchasing a domain name. Now, please be aware that this is not covered under the AWS free tier. You will have to pay for this domain name. But if you don't want to do that, you can still do the vast majority of the lab and you'll still get the same educational experience. Once we've done that, we're then going to find a HTML5 website. We're going to download that off the internet, and then we're going to upload it to our Amazon S3 bucket. Once we've done that, we're going to enable website hosting on that S3 bucket. And so then we'll be able to point our browser to that bucket hosting address, and we'll be able to see this website up and running. When we've got that sorted out, we're then going to be creating a CloudFront distribution, which will hold a copy of our website. And that will be delivered to the many CloudFront edge locations that are located across the globe. Once we have CloudFront set up, we're then going to be looking at routing our traffic using Route 53 for our domain name, so that if anyone types in our domain name, that traffic will go to our CloudFront distribution. Once we've got all that up and running, finally, we're going to do SSL or implement SSL encryption on our website. And that will allow us to have HTTPS addresses. And by doing that, we're going to be more secure, and we're also going to rank higher on search engines because we have that HTTPS implemented. Okay, a picture tells 1,000 words. On the right hand side there, we're going to be using the AWS Management Console to remotely connect into AWS. Then we're going to create an Amazon S3 bucket. We're going to upload our HTML5 website to that Amazon S3 bucket, and we're going to make sure that that is all working. Once we've got that working, we're then going to create a CloudFront distribution based upon the contents of that S3 bucket. Now, that CloudFront distribution will then be delivered to the many CloudFront edge locations across the globe. When we've done that, we're then going to create an SSL certificate using the AWS Certificate Manager. And then we're going to associate that SSL certificate with our CloudFront distribution. And that is going to allow us to have HTTPS addresses for our domain. Once that is up and running, then we can look at using Route 53 to route all of our requests for our domain through to the appropriate CloudFront edge location. And so Route 53 will receive those requests for our domain, whatever it is, .com, and then it will route that through to the appropriate edge location for the region that our client is located in. Now, let's have a go at doing this ourselves. I look forward to seeing you in the lab. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this first part of the lab, we're going to be using the Route 53 service to register a domain name to use for our website. So of course we search for Route 53. And there it is. That will take us into the Route 53 management console. From there, we need to go to domains on the left here and registered domains. Now, I've already registered a domain for this lab called backspace-lab.com. So that's listed here. I'll just go through the process that I did to get that domain name. We first click on register domain and we'll search for a domain name. So web.com, I'm sure, will not be available, but there are some others that are available. We've got multi-Euro-Web. That sounds pretty good. Super Euro Web, webadvisors.net. Maybe we put that one on there. So we just add that to our shopping cart. And as we can see there, a .net is $11, a .com is $12. And that's not covered under the free tier, of course. You will have to pay for that. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can still do the vast majority of this lab without purchasing a domain name. So what we'll do is we click on continue next. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to buy this domain name. I've got plenty of them already. What you'll do next when you click on continue is that you will fill out your personal details, including your phone number and address. And most importantly, you're going to supply a valid email address. And AWS, they will send you a verification link to that email address, which you have to click on. And from there, then you can pay for your domain, and your domain will be up and running, or your domain will be purchased, and your name servers and everything will be up and running for that domain in around about 30 minutes. So once that's done, your registered domain screen will have that listed in there. Now, doing it with AWS and registering the domain with AWS makes life a lot easier. And especially when we start looking at SSL, getting our SSL certificates on AWS again makes life a lot easier for us. We can associate everything very quickly and everything just works seamlessly when we do it like this. So that brings us to the end of this very quick lab, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lab, we're going to be creating an Amazon S3 bucket. We're then going to be uploading our HTML5 code for our website to that bucket. We're then going to be enabling website hosting on that bucket. And if all goes well, we'll be able to see our website in our browser. So let's go to the Amazon S3 management console. Again, we'll search for it here. I'll just open that up in a new tab. And we need to create a bucket. We know how to do that. And we'll give our bucket a name. I always use the domain name that I purchase for my bucket name. You don't have to, but it helps to keep things quite well organized. And we'll scroll down. We need to make this public accessible. So we uncheck block all public access. The reason is we want this to be public accessible because it's a website, and if it's not publicly accessible, it won't be able to be seen. We just need to confirm and acknowledge that we're making this public. We'll check that there. And we'll scroll down. Bucket versioning, we're going to leave that disabled, but again, if this was a production environment, you would want to have that implemented. You could add a tag for this, for example, department, and then the name of that department if you wanted to keep track of the resources that are being created. We could also have server-side encryption enabled. We're not going to worry about that either. Scroll down and we'll click Create Bucket. Okay, so now that our bucket has been created, we can upload a HTML5 website to that bucket. So I'm just going to open up in a new tab and go to html5up.net, and they provide free websites and no obligation there. So I'm just going to click on download, and also I have no affiliation with this company whatsoever, but they do provide some really good templates for you to start with. So I just download one of these. There's a whole heap of them to choose from. Okay, so that's downloading, and it's finished downloading. There we go. So now that we've got our HTML5 website, we just need to make sure that we unzip it. So I'm just going to unzip that now. So extract all, that's fine. Okay, so that's extracted now. So it is originally a zip file, so we just need to extract that. Now we can go to the S3 Management Console. We'll select that bucket and we'll upload all of those files to that bucket. Now, if it didn't drag and drop across to you, you're obviously trying to drag that out of the zip file. So you need to make sure that you unzip it, and then you'll be able to drag and drop that across. What we'll do now is just have a look at the permissions. So it's grant public access. We'll make sure that that is fine. So we're going to grant public read access, and we need to understand the risks of granting public read access. And we'll click upload. Okay, so that has now finished uploading. What we can do now is that we can enable website hosting on this bucket. So I'm just going to close out of this. And in our bucket, our backspace-lab.com bucket, or whatever your bucket is called, we'll go to Properties and we'll scroll down. And there we go. So we've got static website hosting, which is currently disabled. We'll edit that. And we're going to enable that. And we're going to host a static website. That's fine. Now our index document will be index.html. We won't worry about an error document for now. Okay, so that's all that we need to do to set up a website on Amazon S3. Let's click on Save Changes. Okay, we'll scroll back down. And here we have a bucket website endpoint. So if we click on that, we should see our new website. And there we go. There is our website up and running that we downloaded from the HTML5 up website, that paradigm shift website. That brings us to the end of this part of the lab, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this part of the lab, we're going to be using the AWS Certificate Manager to issue a SSL certificate so that we can use that to associate with our website and enable HTTPS communication to our website. So we'll search for the Certificate Manager console, and I'll just open it up in a new tab. So we're going to be requesting a certificate. It will be a public certificate. And now we put in our domain name. And what we also need to do is add another name to this certificate. So if we have any subdomains like www, we need to have those added in as well. So the easiest way to do that is just to use a wildcard symbol. Okay, so anything that is going to be a subdomain of backspacelab.com will also be covered under this public certificate. So we'll just go down here and we've got DNS validation or email validation. So AWS needs to verify we have ownership of this domain, and so they can do that through putting a DNS record in Route 53 for us, and that works if we purchase that domain name from AWS and we're using Route 53. Otherwise, we can also use email validation as well to verify or validate our ownership of this domain. We'll just scroll down here and we'll click on request. So that's going to have the status of pending validation. And what's going to happen is that AWS now is automatically going to create some DNS records in Route 53. And then the certificate manager is going to check against Route 53 and see if those actually exist. And if they do, then that proves that we own this domain and we can have this certificate issued to us. So I'm just going to go away, have a cup of coffee, and then I'll come back and refresh this screen and see whether it's changed to issued. Okay, so after about 5 minutes or so, its status is now issued. So that's all we need to do to create an SSL certificate with AWS. It's a very quick and straightforward process, and it's an even easier and quick and straightforward process to associate it to our website, which we'll be doing coming up next. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this part of the lab, we're going to be creating a CloudFront distribution, and that is going to contain the contents of our Amazon S3 bucket, which of course is our website. And that is going to be distributed across hundreds of edge locations across the globe. Now that's going to provide a number of advantages. First of all, your end users are going to have high speed, low latency access to your website no matter where they are located. And secondly, out of the box, it's going to provide basic distributed denial of service or DDoS protection for our website. And finally, it's going to help us to create HTTPS communication on our website, and that's going to increase security. Plus, it's also going to help us to rank higher on search engines. And we do that by associating our SSL certificate that we just created with this CloudFront distribution. So let's go to the CloudFront Management Console. Of course, we search for it, and there it is. I'll just open that up in a new tab. And we'll click Create a CloudFront Distribution. Now, our origin is going to be our S3 bucket. So we'll just click on it here and we'll select our S3 bucket. So here is my one, backspace-lab.com.s3.amazonaws.com. So that's my S3 bucket there, and that is going to be the origin for this distribution. And we'll just scroll down now. We'll leave everything there as it is. And we're going to redirect HTTP to HTTPS. So anything coming in on HTTP, we're going to make it secure with HTTPS. So you can only access this website through that. And we'll scroll down a little bit more. And under settings, we're going to add our domain name here. So we'll just click on Add Item. And we'll add another one for our www as well. And so what that enables us to do is that we can set up in Amazon Route 53 so that any requests that come in for backspace-lab.com or www.backspace-lab.com will be directed to this CloudFront distribution, and it won't be directed to the Amazon S3 website. And so that's great. It's going to take a lot of that load off the Amazon website. It's going to reduce our costs as well, because the cost of accessing Amazon S3 is significantly more expensive than accessing CloudFront. And now we need to associate our SSL certificate that we created previously. And there it is there. And our default root object, and that's going to be our index.html. And we'll keep scrolling down. I'll give it a description simply so that I can find it and know what this actual distribution actually is. And I'll click on Create Distribution. Okay, so that is now at the status of deploying. These take quite some time to actually get up and running. So we'll give that a bit of time. It's probably going to take a good 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to go away and have a cup of coffee, and hopefully when I come back, it'll all be done. Okay, so after some time, it has actually got up and running now. So what we can do now is go to this distribution domain name, and that should show our website. So I'm just going to open this up in a different tab. And there is our HTML5 website. So now that that's working, and as we can see here also, it's secure. Your connection is secure. We're operating on HTTPS. So that's all working as well. So what we want to do now is to make sure that people can't access using HTTP our original S3 bucket that had website hosting enabled. So what we can do now is that we can go back to that bucket and we can click on Properties, scroll down, and then we can edit our static website hosting, and we can disable that and save that. So now the only way to access this website is through the CloudFront distribution. And so that should still work. So if we refresh the screen here, and there we can see, so we can no longer access that from Amazon S3, but we still will be able to access it through here, through CloudFront. And there we go. So that's working fine. What we need to do now is set up our domain name so that all requests that come in for our domain get redirected to this distribution domain. Okay, I look forward to seeing you in the next lab. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this final part of the lab, we're going to be using Amazon Route 53 to direct traffic for our domain name through to the CloudFront distribution. So we'll go to the Route 53 Management Console, and I'll just open in a new tab here. Okay, so we've got our one hosted zone that has been created for us when we purchased our domain name. And here it is, backspace-lab.com. Yours, of course, will be different. Okay, so we have here some name server records, SOA and CNAME records. Now, the CNAME record, that was created by Route 53 at the request of the AWS Certificate Manager. And what the Certificate Manager is doing, it's confirming that this domain is actually owned by us. And it does that by creating this record for the domain. And so that is how when we talk about DNS verification of the domain in Certificate Manager, that is what's happening. So this CNAME record, which is really nothing, just a whole heap of rubbish here, which has a value of some more rubbish there, but it means something to Certificate Manager. Okay, so let's start off by creating a record that is going to direct traffic for our domain through to the CloudFront distribution. So we'll click on Create Record. So this is going to be an A record, and it's going to be an alias. So we select alias here, and we're going to route our traffic to an alias to a CloudFront distribution. And then all we need to do is just select our CloudFront distribution. And that's it. That's all that we need to do to direct traffic for this backspace-lab.com through to our CloudFront distribution over here. So we'll click on Create Records. And that should come up. So there we can see we've got our A record there, has been created, and it's pointing to our CloudFront distribution there. Now, what happens if someone wants to go to www.backspace-lab.com? We need to take that into consideration as well. So we'll create another record for that. Now, this one is going to be a CNAME record, and it's going to be for a subdomain www. And it's not going to be an alias. It's going to be a value. And so all we're going to do is direct traffic for our www subdomain and just direct it back to our apex domain of backspace-lab.com. And that's all that we need to do for that to happen. And we'll just click on Create Records for that as well. And there we can see we've got our CNAME there for www, and it is pointing to our apex domain there of backspace-lab.com. Now that we've created those records, they need to be propagated across the wider internet, and that's going to take some time. It'll probably take around about 15 minutes or so to be fully propagated. It could take many hours. It just depends. So what I'm going to do now is go to a propagation checker, and there's a link to this in the lab notes. So I'm just going to open that up now. And what we can do is just copy our domain. So just going to copy our backspace-lab.com. And I'm going to paste that in here. And going to check whether that A record has propagated. So I just search. So for the most part it has. It hasn't come through in Canada or Brazil or Turkey. But for the most part it has come through. So probably in about an hour's time, all of that will be done. I'm just going to check whether it has actually come through in my area. So I'm just going to put in the URL or the domain name. And there we go. So now when we go to backspace-lab.com, it takes us to our CloudFront distribution, which is pretty good. Let's see if our www is up and running as well. And there is our www. When we put that in, it automatically directed us back to backspace-lab.com, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. The other thing too is that we have got SSL. We've got HTTPS on this, so the connection is secure. And that's going to help us with ranking on search engines. So I'll just click on that, and there we can see that is fine, not a problem. And the certificate is valid. And so there we can see it's been issued by Amazon, and it provides identity to a remote computer. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so that is all working quite fine. What we can do now is clean everything up and move on with the course. So the first thing that we need to do is to terminate our CloudFront distribution or delete it. What we do first is we disable it. Once it has been disabled, now that hasn't been disabled yet because everything is grayed out, but it will eventually be. It just takes a bit of time. So I'm just going to check on the status. So the status is staying disabled. I'll just refresh the screen now and see what happens. So it hasn't quite come through yet, so it's still in this deploying stage. When it gets out of that deploying stage, then you'll be able to click on delete here. So I'm just going to move on. I'll come back to that later. And we just need to delete that Amazon S3 bucket. Let's find that bucket. There it is. We first need to empty it and type in permanently delete. Okay, so we've emptied the bucket. I'll just exit out of this screen. And now we can delete that bucket. So we select it again and delete. And we just need to put in the name of the bucket. And delete bucket. So we've successfully deleted that bucket. Okay, so all I need to do is give this a bit of time, and when that CloudFront distribution goes, is no longer in the deploying stage here, and it'll go back to be ready, we can then click on the delete button. So that brings us to the end of a very long lab. I hope you got a lot out of this, because a lot of work goes into these labs, and we have literally thousands of pages that are updated, and they're very professional, and I hope you get a lot out of it, because it would be a lot easier for us just to simply teach you with slides, but I genuinely believe, and this is based on me being a senior manager for a very long time who has employed literally hundreds of people, and nothing makes me more furious when I employ people that have certificates who don't know how to do their job. And so when you go through this course, my focus is not only on you being able to pass an exam, but also when you go into that exam, you're confident that you know exactly what this is all about. And when you get that certificate, and when you graduate with that certificate, you can go to an employer, and that employer will be very happy with your knowledge. So I look forward to seeing you in the next one.